someone laying on the floor, nearly lifeless while holding a broken red gemstone. Fire and ash surround a young warrior, wearing a black outfit, a yellow headband and a red scarf. His face is covered in blood, with his forehead drenched in it while his mouth is leaking blood as well. During his dying moments, this warrior remembers how he was humanity's strongest warrior, and he begins to realize that he's dying too. He wonders to himself whether he even deserved to be called humanity's strongest warrior, how he almost killed all the 7-finned demons. However, when it turned out that in the steel of the ancient kings, there would be a final 8-finned demon, it took him by surprise, and he lost the battle. He tries to get up using all his strength, but memories of the 8-finned demon destroying all humanity on the battlefield haunts him. In that moment, a red flying demon floats down near him while he thinks about how it's all his fault this happened, because he failed to live up to his title of the strongest warrior of humanity. As his eyes begin to close for the final time, he can see the demon's hand reach out towards him. Before his life ends in utter darkness, he sees a spark of light as it begins to brighten, before an explosion of light covers his vision. In an instant, our hero wakes up amidst a group of young men all shouting the word salute. His eyes widen as he realizes he's in a completely different place, and he begins to question whether he's in a dream after dying. He looks around and realizes that it looks too realistic around him. He touches his face and begins to cry out in his mind, thinking about where his rugged face and well-built physique went. Who is he, and where is he? Those are the questions that overtake him, and the answer to that is simple. This is the Helios City, a huge wall of city covered by a surrounding wasteland. He seems to be inside some sort of a training facility, standing with the rest of the recruited cadets who aim to become warriors. A man with blonde hair and a blonde beard stands in front of the recruits, and he begins to address them all. He tells them that they must all understand what taking part in the warrior exam will signify for them. He explains that the word warrior signifies two things, protection and hope. This man's golden eyes seem to omit wisdom. He looks as if he's seen many battles. After all, he was Helios City's 3rd squadron leader, Jai Yaoteng. He gives a rundown of what happened 60 years in the past, when the 6 enormous steels of the ancient king brought the apocalypse right to humanity's doorstep. He tells the legend, how thousands of demons poured into their world and slaughtered almost every human that they could find. However, despite being brought to near extinction, humanity persevered. The brutality of the demons taught humans how they must adapt if they want to keep being in this battle, so they came up with a new form of gear to battle them. They named it grafting equipment. This is a piece of tech they created by harvesting the internal cores of the demons, and afterwards they utilized by giving humans strength that would match that of the demons. Then came the strongest warrior of humanity, Aang. He was the king of all men, and he was in charge of all the warriors around the world. Aang and his army of warriors battled against the strongest demonic wave that the world had ever seen. It was a long battle, feeling almost endless as it lasted for many weeks, but as we know already, humans lost and humanity was plunged into darkness. Fortunately, humanity managed to strike the demons back enough to buy themselves 60 years of peace and progress. After hearing this, our protagonist realizes that it has been 60 years since his demise, and that he has been reincarnated into the future. The squadron leader continues talking about the losses that humanity suffered, including their strongest warrior, Aang. He recalls how Aang lost to the strongest of their enemies, the 7-finned demons. This was the war that showcased humanity's perseverance even in the darkest of hours. However, our protagonist has a strong internal reaction to hearing this, thinking how the strongest demon was not the 7-finned demons, but rather a single 8-finned demon that no one knew existed. He wondered how humanity still did not know the full extent of the enemy's capabilities. Meanwhile, the squadron leader is still going on about the war and how it paved a new way for mankind, and finishes off by asking the recruits whether they know the meaning of being a warrior yet or not. The warriors scream in agreement, but he notices our protagonist being quiet and lost in thought. The squadron leader approaches the protagonist, towering over the little guy with his huge physique. He starts scolding him for not knowing what a true warrior is and asks him his name. The protagonist is flustered for a bit, wondering whether to tell the squadron leader that he's actually the incarnation of the history's strongest warrior, Aang. He questions whether anyone would even believe that he's Aang, due to the physical body he reincarnated into being weak and skinny. However, before he can answer, the squadron leader looks surprised as he notices that our protagonist has the same name as the legendary warrior on his badge. He insults him further, saying he's just a stupid boy who doesn't have a warrior's spirit, before grabbing his shoulder and punching him really hard in the face. Aang goes flying away, as he realizes that his new form is by far a huge downgrade to his original body, as it was unable to react to even a basic attack like that. The squadron leader begins to leave the room after telling Aang that he'll keep an eye on him during the warrior examination. He instructs all of the warrior examinees to head to the examination grounds for the physical fitness exam. One of Aang's comrades checks up on him, and Aang is just glad he's alive. The young man introduces himself to Aang and tells him his name is Lan Snow. Meanwhile, far in the room there's a female warrior examinee standing, who makes fun of Aang for having that name and being so frail. She comes closer and makes even more fun of him by saying that having the same name as the great hero Aang wouldn't make him as strong. This was Sidu Liu, another warrior looking to battle the demons on the open field. Aang is pissed at this behavior, wondering what his name has anything to do with her. Lan Snow tells him that she's the most promising warrior in the whole batch. They call Sidu Liu the unsmiling Rakshasa. Not to mention, she's also the firstborn child of the most notable martial arts family in Helios City. Aang begins to wonder why the name Sidu sounds familiar to him, while Lan Snow helps him get back up on his feet. While getting up, they notice a flash behind them. It's a girl with pink hair taking their picture, captioning it a dazzling display of brotherhood. Aang looks at the curvy young woman and asks her who she is. Meanwhile, Lan Snow is seemingly more interested in knowing if this was the person taking photos earlier. She introduces herself as Makoto, who interpreted Lan Snow helping Aang as a bit of a romantic thing. It didn't take long for the two to realize that this girl may not be the sharpest tool in the shed. The scene switches to the fitness test venue, and Aang seems to be having a lot of confidence now. He thinks that even though his body might be frail now, he is still the ultimate warrior nonetheless. He thinks that the test is going to go by quite easy, and that he can obtain monstrous grades. The first test is a long-distance run, an endurance test meant to examine stamina prowess. The race begins. Aang dashes as he is quite confident in his ability to run super fast. He thinks he will break a record. However, the only record he breaks is being the slowest person to reach the finish line ever. As it turns out, this body was in a much worse state than he had imagined. The second stage of the fitness test is about explosive arm strength, and he ends up spraining his wrist. In the third stage of the fitness test, he barely jumps 1 meter, for which he gets called an idiot by Sidu Liu. Not only did Aang place last on the fitness test, he ended up getting the worst results in history. He's disappointed, but Lan Snow is there to console him. While Makoto is disappointed that if Aang fails, she won't get to take more pictures of him and Lan Snow together. One of the invigilators converses with the squadron leader, asking him if Aang should be removed due to having horrible results. The squadron leader is a man of discipline, so even though he doesn't have any hope in Aang's abilities, he gives him the chance to participate in the second round of tests, knowing that it would probably be his final assessment. The second round of tests then starts, where each of the candidates are going to be tested for their synchronization with the grafting equipment. This makes Aang smile, because he knows that the augmented strength from the suits might be able to help him. He had the highest synchronization rate 60 years ago. So, even though he has an unfit body, he might be able to synchronize well due to his willpower. He is visibly determined to show his true prowess, as the warrior examinees are told to proceed into the testing venue. Aang feels a bit flustered looking at the new look of the grafting equipment after 60 years. The suit is much lighter than before, and looks much more comfortable. Meanwhile, on the stage we see Sidu Liu being examined for her synchronization with the grafting suit, and she gets a 39% synchronization rating. Everyone is shocked because of how high it is, admiring how she's from a martial arts family and how beautiful she is. Aang doesn't get the hype though, but Sidu Liu removes the connecting cord and walks off the stage, looking all dazzling as she leaves the room. However, looking at things from her perspective, we see how anxious she gets over her performance. She forces herself to calm down and keep her cool. Aang, on the other hand, is somewhat impressed by her prowess, thinking about how she got a 39% synchronization rate even on just the assessment. Lan Snow and Aang have a conversation about how they feel about Sidu Liu, with both showing appreciation of imposing force hidden beneath her slender body. Lan Snow notices that Aang isn't nervous at all about this second exam, and Aang tells him that he's used to it. That answer definitely surprises Lan Snow, but Aang stays quiet. As the tests go on, rookies are seen feeling intense pain as they are assessed for their synchronization rates with the grafting equipment. The demonic core has a big impact on the body, so there's a major burden that the body must endure at first, to reach that 10% synchronization rate to pass. However, a lot of the rookies were unable to withstand it, with some even giving up due to the pain. Still, both Lan Snow and the pink-hair girl Makoto end up passing, with Lan Snow reaching a 24% synchronization rate, and Makoto getting a surprising 30% synchronization rate, which no one expected. Squadron leader Yao Tang is happy that they've found some good rookies with actual potential. His assistant tells him that they indeed have better rookies compared to other C-rank cities, since this assessment alone has seen 6 rookies with over 30% synchronization already. They might be proud about having a good batch of rookies, but there's some bad eggs too according to squadron leader Yao Tang. For example, a weakling like Aang. As Aang begins to walk up on stage, he starts noticing that everyone is looking at him, but that doesn't deter him from his goal. He's ready to show everyone his true capabilities. He walks up towards the stage and puts his hand on the strength core, a shining bright red gemstone like the one he clutched while he was dying in his previous life. It seems that demonic cores can be categorized into 6 variations. Red is what represents strength. Yellow represents defense. Green is for healing, and blue is for agility. However, the rarer two are purple and black. Purple represents imaginary power. Meanwhile, black represents time and space. Both of these are extremely hard to find, especially the black core. Aang reminds himself that the most important thing is willpower as he puts the core into his suit. He's ready to show the strength of his willpower, which determines how much pain the body can take from the demonic core while also showing off the user's mastery of it. They connect the cord to Aang's core, and a huge bright red spark fills the room, going so far that it even reaches the lounge. The selected rookies are surprised to see such a strong reaction from the demonic core, and to see Aang as its user. The synchronization rate ends up reaching 40% in an instant, and the number is still going higher. He can feel the pain of it all, but he's ready to show how strong his willpower truly is. He pushes himself further, forcing his body to its absolute limit. The number goes up to 60%, leaving the squadron leader in absolute disbelief, as he wonders whether there's been equipment malfunctioning of some sort in the calculating process. The number keeps climbing higher, from 70% to now 80%. Aang was in his element now. He was feeling the power pulsate through his body. But in an instant, it all shut down. He felt himself losing all of his power and being pushed back into a powerless abyss. The red core began to crack, and it just snapped. The core had broken, and the cord automatically ripped itself out. Aang fell to the floor, realizing that this body simply cannot withstand his true power. The number falls down to 10%, the exact synchronization rate that is needed to pass the test. The people who were assessing him come to the conclusion that the red core was malfunctioning, which increased the number to such a high degree before breaking. They all breathed a sigh of relief for some reason. Aang had barely passed though, according to the squadron leader's assistant. Everyone starts making fun of him in the testing venue, but Lan Snow quickly rushes to Aang so he can help his friend out. He asks his buddy if he's alright, and Aang is seemingly in a state of unconsciousness as he agrees. Sidu Liu is breathing a sigh of relief more than anyone else, glad that no one else is as dazzling as her in this whole examination facility. Aang is just glad that he managed to pass, which is all he needed. As Lan Snow takes him back to the lounge, Makoto doesn't miss a single chance to grab photos of the two guys together. Later in the lounge, Aang wonders to himself about what happened. He clearly had enough willpower to manage an 80% rating. But something came out from the depths of his heart that sucked all his power away. A demonic core of even the lowest level shouldn't have cracked like that, which dumbfounded Aang. The squadron leader comes into the lounge and congratulates everyone for passing the second round of assessments. Now, it was time for the final round, the practical tests. This would be the most difficult of all tests, as the rookies would have to battle against a real demon for the first time in their lives. This scares every single one of them, but most of all it's Aang, who thinks that he is going to die. They all leave the room, but the squadron leader notices something on the floor near the area where Aang was sitting. It's a small piece of a red core. This makes the squadron leader feel a bit more curious about Aang. There was something about his determination that truly captured the Yao Tang's attention. He now wondered what Aang would show him in the final test, named aptly as the hunting in the fog beyond the walls. Birds fly above Helios City, as its walls ensure its safety from the outside world that has been overtaken by demons. Not many are confident enough to step outside the comfort of these walls, but warriors are meant to take that leap of faith. The compound door had been opened, as our young rookies were to take a step outside for the first time in their lives. The compound door is slowly lifted upwards, letting the bright rays of the sun in. Aang wonders about how the humans have started to live inside such isolated places, while the rest of the rookies take in the outside air for the first time. He was given a new strength core for his grafting equipment. However, he still believes that it wasn't the core that was the problem. He can sense that something in his body rejected the power. He wondered if it was a side effect of the transmigration. But he has no time to worry about that right now, as he had to take this test head on. Aang takes his first step outside of the compound door and into the real world away from the comfort of the city. As soon as he took his first step outside, he felt a sharp shiver going through his body. Something got notified of his presence. It was like a radar, a notification for demonkind to know about Aang's presence in the world. We see a ripple effect as more demons begin to know about his existence, until it reaches a deep dark cave. There, a dark shadowy demon wonders how there could be a demon that can outrank him. At that moment, Aang could feel something deep inside his heart. A dark presence inside of him, as he felt the demons and saw them. He heard a voice behind him, asking him if he was going to move. It was Sidu Liu, seemingly annoyed by the protagonist for blocking her path. Lan Snow follows right behind her and asks him if he's doing alright. He wants to answer Snow's question, but one of the instructors tells them to quickly gather up into a group. Since everyone else had already left, looks like these four will be part of the same team. Makoto asks Aang if he was aiming to form a team with them all along. He wants to clear up his intentions, but Sidu Liu cuts him off and tells him to not bring the team down if he's going to be a part of it. She then has an internal conversation with herself about how she was worried that no one would want to team up with her. Snow encourages Aang and says that they must do their best in this training, while Makoto takes a selfie of her newfound team as they walk away. We see one of the steels of the ancient kings, the dispelling steel. This black steel made of solid stone texture contains a special substance within it, which is used to dispel the fog. The instructor then tells the squads that they must take on the final assessment in groups of 4, where they will hunt in the fog. The teams then receive a hunting dagger to kill demons. They also received a small device with which they can dispel the fog, made out of the dispelling steel. The assignment is quite simple. The teams would have to make their way to the designated locations that have been marked with flashing lights, and insert the device in the flashing lights to dispel the fog. Once that is complete, they must hunt down as many finless demons as possible. The assessment will be based on both individual strength and team cooperation. This final trial is the most terrifying one of all. They wouldn't just need good physique and fighting skill, but rather the mental fortitude to overcome tricky situations and challenges that are ahead of them. They would also need to learn how to work together as a team, because that would be their only way of surviving this test with the best grades. They would scan the area properly and fight demons that first appear to earn the title of warrior. The exam was going in full force, and up at the top of the wall, a woman with a gorgeous body and attractive face was looking down at them. She speaks about the batch of rookies being quite promising, but her current target is none other than Sidhu Liu, due to her family name. This is none other than 2nd Squadron Leader Gel. She asks the 2 men next to her on what they think. The 1st Squadron Leader Joel is also interested in seeing Sidhu Liu's growth. However, the 3rd Squadron Leader Yao Tang is still curious about Aang, as he mentions him to his comrades. He proposes that Aang is worth watching out for. You see, Yao Tang had sent the red core that Aang used during the synchronization exam for testing. It turns out that there was nothing wrong with that core. It left him wondering what had happened, but Gel cuts him off by calling him a funny name, which annoys Squadron Leader Yao Tang. Anyways, Dada starts asking whether the demons were graded properly, because she wishes to ensure the safety of the rookies first and foremost. Yao Tang tells her that they've consistently checked over and over around the vicinity, and only no fin demons were found around Helios City. Joel reminds them that if a one-fin demon does appear out of nowhere, they must ensure that they protect the rookies at any cost. After all, they are the future of humanity. It is now the turn of our heroes group to finally undertake the practical exam. The team of Aang, Snow, Makoto, and Sidhu Liu are seemingly prepared for it. Aang is ready with the dispelling device in his hand, but Sidhu grabs it from him and starts running, telling the rest to follow her. Aang is a bit annoyed at her attention-seeking, but he does as she says and tells the rest to follow her too. They run through the fog, prepared for the dangers that they might be subjected to. They could see the flashing light, which was their destination. They run hard and fast, but Sidhu Liu is someone who enjoys showing off. Once they are near their destination, she leaps high up into the air and does a backflip, landing on her feet and planting the dispelling device into the objective. Dada is pleasantly surprised by Sidhu Liu, stating that even though she has a green recovery core, she has a huge amount of stamina. Without her realizing, a group of demons begins to rush towards her. However, the squad is right behind her, as Aang tells Snow to use his defense core and break through their attacks. Snow leaps into the air this time, and lands right near the demons. His landing sends a shockwave that sends the demons flying into the air and blocks the battlefield with his shield bubble. This impresses Squadron Leader Yao Tang, who is amazed at Snow's ability to use his core powers already. Aang does a flourish of his dagger and tells Liu and Suju to kill a demon each. The girls were already prepared and need no instructions. All 3 of them rush towards a demon separately and begin their fights with them. From this point, we see the fights in 3 pieces. The first round shows us Makoto versus a finless demon. The demon seems to be fast, but using her agility core, the girl dodges the attacks thrown towards her. She somehow manages to get atop the demon and kicks it so hard that it flies down towards the ground, where Snow is ready to punch it in the guts. The demon gets rocketed several meters back, killing it on the impact. Up on the wall, Squadron Leader Joel is admiring their teamwork, and he remarks on how the agility core has improved the girl's movements by tenfold. But it seems like her agility wasn't the only thing he was looking at, and Yao Tang was the first to reprimand him for his pervertedness. The second fight is between Sidhu Liu and a larger demon. It's not a big deal for her though, as she simply jumps onto the demon and stabs it with her dagger. Her dagger begins to fill the demon's body with explosive energy, giving it large bulbous calluses while it shrieks in pain. She then jumps off of the demon, lands on her feet and simply says boom. The green explosive energy inside of the demon explodes, completely decimating the monster. The third fight is between Aang and a fighter demon. Unlike the others, Aang has a strategy in this fight, which is to strike the 3 vital points of a demon. He would first strike the neck, causing a massive injury to its breathing. Then the chest, which houses some of the most important organs in the body. Lastly, he would cut the demon's abdomen, causing it to bleed out. He would quickly take this demon out within a few hits. He tries to execute those hits, but he failed to finish off the demon, due to the frail human body he's having to handle. Since there isn't a lot of power this body can draw from the core, he decides to use this battle to test his limits. He rushes towards the demon with every ounce of his being, wanting to truly put his body to the limit. The demon reacts to this move by furiously throwing an unexpected punch aimed right at Aang's head. Aang is surprised, but he reacts quickly to dodge the right hook. He pushes his knife to stab the demon's ribs, but the demon knew his game plan. Aang only got a tiny cut into the demon's rib when he realized right away that he didn't respond to the attack fast enough. The demon brings its leg forward and tries to kick him, but Aang safely moves underneath it to dodge once again with the grace of a warrior. He then uses this opportunity and flings the knife into his other hand while staring directly into the demon's soul with his terrifying stare. He pokes again, this time aiming at the demon's gut and successfully managing to cut it once again, but his hand-eye coordination was too weak for it to be a destructive blow, despite being fatal. The demon's mouth drips green blood, signaling that it was bleeding internally. In an act of desperation, the demon throws its whole body towards Aang. However, it only gets cut up even further. Then, Aang uses his body weight to make the demon trip. While it falls face first on the ground, Aang maneuvers himself to slash at its mouth. The demon falls to the floor as Aang lands on his feet. Lan Snow, Makoto, and Sidu Liu are watching him show off his skill, flipping his knife around. Lan Snow notices that Aang seems to be toying with the demon, while Makoto is too busy taking pictures and Sidu Liu is preoccupied feeling insecure about Aang's skill. Aang's skillful antics catch the attention of the squadron leaders, especially Dada Gel, who asks about him from her comrades, stating that he is impressive. The first squadron leader, Joel, notices that Aang is moving like a veteran, someone who has had experience in this line of work. Squadron leader Jai Yaotang is simply looking, unsure of what to think of this young, scrawny kid. The monster stays on all fours, bleeding as its whole body is cut up by Aang's poking and stabbing. Aang is bent over, holding his knees and taking a breather. He comes to the conclusion that his new form is weak. He knows that he cannot use any of his older skills, and he runs out of breath quite fast. He's done testing himself at this point, so he decides that it was time to put an end to the demon. He rushes towards it, with an intention of executing the monster right then and there. Suddenly, he hears a voice whispering the word, emerge. The ground strikes open. Right in front of Aang's eyes, a pink fang-shaped root protrudes from within the ground. It stabs through the demon's chest as a pool of roots come flowing out of it. Siuju notices that they've been encircled by roots, as there seems to now be a powerful entity among them. A hand rips through the demon's back. Then, another hand comes out of it, as each hand grabs one side. In a flash, the demon is ripped into two, as another creature walks out of its entrails. Aang is terrified. A look of confusion, question, and terror take over his face. This xenomorph-looking entity has no eyes, a bony face and large teeth. It pulls its head out of the back of the dead demon and lets out a loud roar. The squadron leaders chilling above the walls notice the commotion, as signals are sent to them through a colorful smoke. The smoke travels to three of them atop the wall, and it affects Jai Yaotang the most. His face is filled with fear as he realizes that this wasn't just a regular demon case, but rather something much more terrifying. This was a one-fin demon, and there were students stuck around it. The other students are running away from the roots, panicking and yelling for their lives, begging to be saved. Joel and Dada Gel both jump off of the wall in an effort to fend off the threat themselves in this situation. Loud gusts of wind, smoke and dust take precedence over the whole location, as Dada Gel and Joel are both running at the fastest speed possible to help the rookies. They find the rookies running away, and Dada tells them to head to Jai Yaotang, who will escort them to the city. The one-fin demon finally steps onto the ground and notices that he's surrounded by humans, but he states that he smelled a demon. Aang is confused by this. He wonders how this could be. How could a human smell like a demon? The demon scans them all, looking at each one intently and wondering which one of them is what he was looking for. It starts to walk towards them slowly, looking at as menacing as you'd expect. Sidu wonders if that's a one-fin demon. She realizes that it looks nothing like the others. Fear begins to take hold of her mind, as she begins to imagine herself getting destroyed by the roots and unable to resist the pressure. The demon walks to where Aang stands, who is sure that his current body could not take on this monster. Aang is sweating from nervousness. He's realizing that this is how normal warriors must feel when they face a fin demon. The demon reaches its hand out to Aang. 4 balls of light begin to emerge out of its fingers, as it states that it will bring them all. A white laser beam comes out of its hand and attaches itself right to their forehead. They seem almost hypnotized, completely paralyzed of all their bodily movements. They fall to the ground and pass out. The demon is ready to take them all. However, it notices a crack in the root structure and is taken aback. Bursting through that crack in the root come our heroes, Joel and Dada. Joel screams at the demon, telling it not to touch the rookies. The demon simply responds by throwing even more roots towards them, to block their path. It says bye, and the ground beneath it begins to sink. The demon smirks as it says goodbye again. Covered by roots, a huge hole in the ground forms and it falls into it along with the rookies. Dada and Joel are just stumped, shocked to realize that it just took 4 examinees with it. The hole in the ground is vast and deep, surrounded by large tree trunks. They notice that next to the hole in the ground, cracks are beginning to emerge, almost as if they were a trail leading to the one-fin demon's location. Joel decides that they must go after it anyhow. In the middle of a forest, surrounded by cliffs and large trees that block the lighting, we see Dada and Joel staring at the trail that was potentially leading them to the one from the demon. Dada is confused. Despite Jai Yaotang's multiple checking and examinations of the arena, a one-finned demon appeared in this place. It just seemed impossible. She knew how careful and cautious he was, which made this even more mysterious. They didn't know what the protocol was, and something like this had never happened before. Suddenly, Joel can hear his name being called out from above as we see squadron leader Jai Yaotang jumping into the scene. He lands on the ground and immediately asks about the kids who were taken. He scolds the two for stopping and says that they should keep chasing them. Joel tells him to calm down and mentions how the tracks had stopped here. Dada says that the one-finned demon probably started digging underground once it got to this point, and says the area up ahead is uncharted territory, so it would be unwise to rush in. Jai Yaotang is obviously very shaken about this, blaming himself and feeling a sense of guilt. He thinks about a past memory, a traumatic event that shaped his personality. Someone dear to him was taken from him by demons, and he has never let go of that. He rages and punches the ground, breaking it apart into many pieces. He blames himself, saying that it was his mistake to not check properly. Joel and Dada are staring at their comrade, as he blames himself for things that weren't in his control. Joel says that they should head back to the city so they can stop some of the panic. Dada mentions how all three of them cannot be away from the city, and that they should send an exploration party to check the surrounding areas for clues and other one-finned demons. She attempts to help her comrade by putting her hand on his shoulder and telling him that none of them wanted this to happen, but they must keep their composure. He pushes her hand away and tells them both to head back first so that he can search for a bit longer. Joel is a bit annoyed at first, and he almost yells at his friend. However, he's cut off by Dada, who just tells Yaotang to return before sunset. He looks back at her and says that he knows. He runs away into the forest, trying his best to pick up the trail again. Dada talks to Joel, saying that he wasn't going to listen to them anyways. Joel acknowledges this. He knows that Jai Yaotang hasn't been the same ever since his little brother was dragged away by a demon in the past. Dada's melancholic eyes note that if Jai Yaotang's younger brother were alive, he'd be the same age as the examinees. She knows that the children reminded him of his younger brother. Deep underground, inside of a cavern-like structure, Aang wakes up. He opens his eyes and looks at his comrades, questioning where they are and assuming that they're underground. His comrades are around him, but they're also tied to pillars just like him. He can feel breathing directly behind him as the creature has its mouth opened, asking Aang if he's woken up. Aang looks back quickly. He notices that he's able to understand the words of the one-finned demon. The demon acknowledges that Aang is different because he woke up so much quicker than the others. It's fascinated by our hero, and Aang has no idea what to expect in this situation. Suddenly, he feels the demon's hand grab his face. The wooden pole that he's attached to breaks when the demon grabs him. With its hand on Aang's throat, it asks him why he smells like a demon. It wonders why a human would smell stronger than a one-finned demon. Aang's bleeding from his face, confusingly asking what the demon is trying to say. Suddenly, the crystal inside of Aang's suit surges a blast of red energy and sends the demon flying back. Aang lands on the ground with his knife in his hand. He rushes towards the demon, ready to strike a killing blow that would end its misery. The demon decides to clap back as it strikes with its sharp claws. Aang dodges the attack, doing a backflip to safety. He was now locked in a fight with the demon, as he thinks about how easily he could have destroyed the demon if he was in his original body. The responsibility of saving his friends, it lingered over his mind. So, he decided to send it and rushed at the demon once again. He notices that this is a red-cored demon, owning an agile body and flexible joints. It can react quickly to any attacks and respond just as fast. However, its joints are vulnerable to attacks as well. The demon stares at Aang, telling him his efforts are futile as he runs towards it. As Aang is rushing, the demon quickly attacks with its sharp and long claws. It pierces through Aang's chest, and for a moment, it looks as though Aang will not survive this demon's powerful stab. Thankfully, the demon only managed to strike him in the shoulder and pierce through his body. However, Aang knew that this would happen, and it was his only moment to find a weakness. With its claws impaled into his shoulder, its joints were now vulnerable to an attack. Aang strikes right into its shoulder joint, stabbing through it with his knife. He pulls at it with utmost ferocity. This power move results in our hero tearing out the demon's arm. It squeals in pain as its arm has just been dismembered. Aang smiles. He knows that he has an upper hand in this battle now. He's killed one-finned demons before, and this shouldn't be an issue for him. However, the demon simply chuckles before it strikes again, and this time punches Aang right through the chest. The hit is so massive, it makes him bleed from the mouth. Aang goes flying across the room until he hits the wall, causing a small crater to form around him. He lays on the ground, with his chest bleeding and his body on the brink of unconsciousness. The creature talks about how even if Aang knew its weakness, it's a wood-type demon with a redwood core. If there's one thing that our hero didn't know, it's that it can heal itself. Aang is shocked. He only knew that green-cored demons could heal themselves, and he did not know what a wood type meant. Terror takes over his face as he realizes that perhaps after a century, the demons have also evolved. The demon stares at our hero and gestures him to come forward with its finger. Roots began to protrude from the wall, impaling our hero's body, puncturing through his organs, and sending Aang back into the demon's hands. The demon held him by the head as our hero glared at it. The demon doesn't understand what Aang is, and decides to just let him die. Aang is now on the verge of death. The pain is too much for him to even breathe. He can't believe he's about to die like this after being reincarnated. He thinks about his comrades, wondering how he has failed them as they will also die. He knows too well how it feels to have comrades die. He had seen it in his previous life. He apologizes as he's ready to breathe his last breath. However, a voice from within him states that it cannot accept this. The one-fin demon inspects the body and notices that Aang is dead. The demon wonders if it eats Aang, will it evolve? So, it decides to eat Aang. Just as it's about to put its gnarly jaws upon his face, something happens. Something awakens inside of our hero, and it's the spirit of a powerful demon. His body surges with such powerful energy that it sends the demon flying back. The voice speaks to our hero, talking about how he cannot die or its plans will go to waste. The crystal laced into his suit begins to awaken. The voice inside of him wonders how its last sliver of consciousness is being used like this. The one-fin demon senses the presence of this terrifying force within Aang. A blast of powerful energy begins to emanate from our hero, and the one-fin demon makes assumptions on how it could be a 5-finned or a 6-fin demon. Aang begins to float out of sheer power as the voice within him laughs at the fact that the demon thinks it's such a weakling. His body begins to transform. His feet and arms turn red, and claws began to pop out where his fingernails were. His body turns into that of a demon, a powerful red demon with silver hair and horns that would terrify anyone. Suddenly, from within Aang's body, an explosion of powerful energy surges through the ceiling, tearing through it and lighting the entire room red. The blast is so powerful that it can even be seen on the surface. The effects are so strong that they are affecting other demons, tearing them to shreds and absolutely disintegrating them. The whole area has felt the impact of this explosion. Right at the core of it was Aang, his body now transformed, with a powerful demonic energy surrounding it. This new form of Aang began to talk to the one-fin demon. It mentions that it is the only 8-fin demon in the world, the Crimson Crystal's strongest existence. It is the king of all demons. The one-fin demon begins to have a nervous breakdown as it realizes who it is up against. Aang commands it to kneel, and the demon falls onto its knees. Aang once again commands it to speak his name. The demon states in its nervous and broken voice, the Crimson Fin King. We see the terrifying yet majestic form that our hero had now taken. He was the demon above all demons. As the 3rd Squadron leader searched for the missing examinees, he patrolled the area as a strong gust of wind came his way. The gust of wind was so strong that it almost pushed him off his feet. He grabbed onto the ground and made sure that he didn't lose his footing. He suddenly saw a green dragon-like demon, and he rushed past it. He landed right next to it, and in a fit of rage he decided to attack it. He punches the demon so hard that his arm impales it and blows up its internal organs. Another demon attacks him as he does this, and he dodges the attack. He reacts with a kick that breaks the demon's jaw. He then slams the demon into the ground and puts his foot through its neck. After killing these demons, the squadron leader realizes that he's finished patrolling the area. There were only 2 fin demons in this area, and the kids were just not here. He has a worry on his face, as he knows that he must continue looking for them. He looks up into the sky, thinking about his brother, as he knows that he must find the examinees before nightfall or they could lose them forever. Suddenly, he sees the explosion behind him. The explosion caused by Aang's transformation, and a red beam of crimson energy surging towards the sky. The explosion and its shockwave took the area by storm. It was an energy wave so big that it crumbled the buildings, the ground, and even the monsters that were in its vicinity. The squadron leader protected his face and his eyes, while wondering what this energy wave was. He looked towards the direction of where it came from, and wondered if the kids were there. Meanwhile, in the underground bunker where the one-fin demon had taken the examinees, we see total domination. Aang in his newfound form as the Crimson Fin King flies down to the ground and lands next to the one-fin demon. The demon is kneeling, its head and arms on the ground, as it calls Aang its king. The Crimson King wonders how he didn't think that the sky would be this dark even after his return. He asks the one-fin demon a question and commands it to answer. He asks it that ever since he vanished, are the demon lords still those 5? The one-fin demon answers in agreement, stating that the demon lords are the same, with no change in their positions. The king comments on how they're seemingly living quite peacefully with each other, which, strangely enough, makes him burst out with laughter. He assumes that they've forgotten about what they did to him 60 years ago. He is disappointed in the body he chose. He selected this body because it belonged to humanity's strongest soldier, but he didn't expect that it would be so weak after reincarnation. Furthermore, he is disappointed in the fact that his last consciousness has been wasted in a situation like this. He needs to make this human awaken completely so that he can make his appearance once more. He's angry at the fact that Aang is so weak. It feels to him as though his patience is being tested. He has to now wait for Aang to slowly awaken and understand the concept of the Fin memories. The Lesser Demon asks his king whether he meant the memories that they use when evolving. The Crimson King talked about how fins show prominently on their bodies, and the more they have, the higher their strength and level is. He talks about how the leader of the Dark Clan grew new fins, and demonic evolution requires those fin memories. He states that this is why demons are ahead of the other races, and how the human warrior called Aang is currently just like all of the other fin demons. The distinction between them is that a regular demon requires devouring someone of the same kind to evolve, whereas Aang just needs to devour demons of higher level than him. This is how he will acquire the fin memories and evolve into a higher being. The Crimson King glances at the one fin demon and marks him as a present for Aang. The demon begins to plead for its life, saying that it will support and do anything that the Crimson King requires. He begs that he will help him awaken. The Crimson King points towards it and grabs it with telekinesis. He stares into the lesser demon's soul and states that it's not worthy of any of that. He points his finger upwards, destroying the demon and readying him for consumption. The Crimson King only sees the demon's worth as an aid for the human warrior to awaken his first fin memory. He addresses our hero, saying that it has prepared the first step for him. He then commands Aang not to disappoint him when he levels up in the future. And finally, he begins to leave Aang's body, asking him to awaken step by step until he reaches the 8-fin stage. The Crimson King will wait in his slumber until then, and only when Aang fulfills his promise will the Crimson King awaken once more. Aang falls onto the floor, kneeling as the crimson crystal in his chest begins to glimmer. The Crimson King begins to vanish, and so does Aang's human form until we see him wake up in his original body. He lays there on the battlefield, next to one of his comrades who refers to him as his king. The soldier doesn't want to die, saying that someone is waiting for him to return. Aang reaches his hand out to him, promising him that he won't die. He promises the soldier that he will help everyone survive. He grabs his fellow soldier's hand, as both of them are taking some of their last breaths. The soldier's soul leaves his body as he tells Aang that they've all already died. He sees a deformed and mutilated face of his comrade from the previous life as it asks him why he's still alive, despite everyone else being already dead. Thankfully, this was just a nightmare. Aang wakes up in a bed in his scrawny young boy body. He holds his head, glad that it was only a dream. However, that relaxation quickly dies when he realizes that it was a memory that took a more gruesome form. He hears Lan Snow's voice call out to him as he removes the curtain and enters the room. His squad has come to pay him a visit. Sidu Liu, Lan Snow, and Makoto, they're all glad to see him awake. Makoto leans in close to his face, staring at him. Her big sparkly eyes stare into his soul as she asks him why his hair looks different. She wonders if the demon was the cause of that. He doesn't know what she's talking about and is overly conscious of how close she is to his face. He then asks if all of them are okay, and they say that they're fine. He asks them if they remember how they were taken to the demon's underground cave. Behind one of the curtains stands squadron leader Jai Yao Tang, who notes that Aang remembers something. As the curtain is pulled away, we see not only Jai Yao Tang, Joel and Dada are there too, and they demand to know everything that happened in that cave. Now, as Aang lay there on the hospital bed, he had to answer for everything he had experienced before losing consciousness. The third squadron leader questioned him about what happened in the cave, and everyone wanted to know what had happened. Aang noticed that the other two captains were present here. These were probably captains stationed outside of the city walls. He questioned why Captain Jai Yao Tang was there. The second squadron leader, who we're going to just name Jessica Rabbit, jumps into the conversation and says that her precious Tang Tang was the one that brought them all back safely after the chaos. Tang Tang doesn't like being called that, and he tells Jessica Rabbit about it, but she just teases him more. The squad is looking at it feeling all weird. The first squadron leader, who is the epitome of the good-looking tired of his life guy, says that they were found outside a cave. He tells them how they were all unconscious and just laying there helplessly on the ground. He was glad that the one-fin demon wasn't anywhere near them, otherwise they would have been dead, according to him. Jessica Rabbit tells him that the other three in his team woke up pretty fast, and the only one that was in a coma and also had significant changes to their hair, eyes, and body was Aang. Aang stares at his face in the mirror. He can sense the mark of the Crimson King upon his face, but he doesn't know yet. Meanwhile, Jessica Rabbit starts pushing him to tell them everything he remembers. He can't focus though. He wonders what happened to his hair. He feels completely unrecognizable to even himself. He doesn't remember anything that happened in the cave, aside from trying his best to fight that demon. After he was almost killed by that tree demon and went unconscious, he had no recollection of what happened. For a moment, he questioned whether he should come clean about everything. Should they know that he had been reincarnated? It didn't make sense. If they knew, it would turn into a whole big thing. And they won't even believe him because he has no recollection of what even happened to him. He had to use his identity as this new version of Aang to make his move and clarify everything. Aang tells them an elaborate story, saying that he briefly woke up and saw that he was in a cave, after which he passed out again. He says that's why he knew that there was a cave, but he knows nothing else, only waking up again right now at this hospital. Tang Tang does not believe him, but he questions himself too. Maybe he was overthinking this whole thing. Maybe Aang wasn't a sussy baka like he thought. Yet there was one loose thread, the blood splatter on the wall in that cave. No mere mortal could have caused that. Whatever happened in that cave had Tang Tang feeling like a detective wanting to get to the very deepest tunnel of this case. The emo boy rolls in next to our hero on his moving stool, asking him if his name was actually Aang. He notes that our hero shares the name with the legendary warrior Aang, and judging from his results on the different tests, he can sense that while Aang's foundation might be weak, he's too calm and composed when fighting demons. He looks Aang straight into the eyes and asks him if he's fought a demon before. Aang goes completely defensive, saying that he just has an interest in fighting and that he gathers details and analyzes all the different kinds of demons for their weaknesses. Jessica Rabbit notes that he's the theory type, and asks Tang Tang to cultivate a warrior like Aang. The phrase, cultivating a warrior, quickly reminds our hero of the tests, and he inquires everyone about his results. Makoto tells him that he passed his warrior test splendidly, and that they are still part of a team as well. Snow tells him that the accident was considered fate, so the captain made them a team. Makoto is excited to keep working with Aang, but Sidu Liu is quiet because she's not the center of attention anymore. Of course, when she does open her mouth, she tells him that they're already behind the other teams. Aang wonders why that's the case. How could they have fallen behind if they survived such a hardcore demon? Tang Tang chips into the conversation, saying that every team needs to pass so they can do missions and gather points. Since he'd been unconscious for 3 whole days, their team has 0 points. Our hero screams out loud. He couldn't believe that he had been unconscious in a coma for 3 whole days. The squad begins to ready up. They gather their gear and put on their battle suits, ready to get back to work and make up for the days that they had spent resting. The crowd is spectating. They were awed as they looked at these young warriors ready to embark on their journey, suited up for battle. Their captain was standing in front of them, and he told them that he would explain all of the rules to them. Firstly, he congratulated all 4 of them on officially becoming warriors. Not to mention, he also congratulated them for being safe and sound after facing a one-fin demon. No, he stated that they have been grouped together as a team under his care, which means that squadron leader Jai Yaotang was now the captain of their team, the captain of their ship, the butter to their toast, the ice to their drink. Anyways, he mentions that he's currently in charge of 9 teams, and he wants this group to stand out among them. The imposter, Aang, asks the captain what it means to stand out from the rest in this case. He wondered why the rules to becoming a warrior had become so complicated. Before, in his day and age, as soon as you became a warrior, you were sent to the battlefield so you can make a name for yourself as a demon killer. Lan Snow asks Aang if he knows about the small team point ranking system, which our boy surely doesn't. Sidu Liu is just as annoyed as ever, calling him a newbie who doesn't know anything, while thinking that he's going to drag her down. It turns out, they were currently the lowest ranking team. Tang Tang mentions that the reason for this system being created was so that they can stimulate healthy competition using the point ranking system. This would help in improving all the warriors under each captain's charge. Tang Tang further elaborates, stating that since he has 9 teams under his charge, they would be competing with 8 other teams. They could obtain points by completing missions of varying levels, and the more points they score, the higher their ranking would end up being. At the end of every month, the teams with the most points, along with 6 small teams and the subordinates of the captains in charge, will enter a small competition, and the first place team will receive a reward. Of course, since it's a ranking system, each team on the lowest place will be punished. They'll essentially be demoted to the cleaning crew, and would have to wait a whole month for the next batch of last place teams to arrive. Aang thinks about how convenient that is, thinking about how the streets are so clean because of that ranking system being in place. Tang Tang finishes his speech by saying that these are the rules for becoming a proper warrior. Since the demons keep evolving, the warriors must learn to adapt without relaxation. He appoints Sidu Liu as the team leader because she has the highest points in the test. I gotta take a break here and admire the phenomenal art in place. Lan Snow has no objections, neither does Makoto. Meanwhile, Aang is boiling like a zit with jealousy, remembering that he used to be the strongest warrior of humanity and wishing that he would have been chosen as the leader. Sidu walks up front, to bow her head and take responsibility as the leader. She states that they will complete their mission, while bursting from happiness on the inside because she was chosen as the leader. Tang Tang tells them that since it's still afternoon, they should go and decide what kind of mission their team will take. He also suggests them to look at the points from all the other small teams, just so they're more aware of the shit show they were in. He also reminds them that they will have to accustom their nano-wing battle suits in actual combat, so if there are any problems, they should let him know. He dismisses the squad and walks away, wishing them good luck as they salute him and show their respect. Sidu Liu immediately takes charge and tells them that they should go look at the mission board, talking about how they're 3 days behind. However, the team is going in the exact opposite direction. Makoto tells her to wait, since they have something much more important to do first. This sends Sidu Liu in a frenzy of confusion. She panics and wonders if she's made a wrong decision 3 seconds after she was made the leader. Turns out, God bless this art, Makoto's priority was to take an official first photo of them as a proper team. Shadowy is annoyed, but she can't fight the majority anyways. Meanwhile, Aang is wondering about the small teams and thinking about the situation. At the end, he comes to the conclusion that this might not be that bad after all. Their first official photo as a team is taken, and it's a splendid portrait if I may say so myself. Scene switches to the 3 team captains as they hang out on a balcony diving deeper into the situation at the cave. Tang talks about how there were signs of an unknown demon's blood splattered everywhere inside the cave as the emo boy lights up a smoke. He asks Tang if he's implying that one of those 4 kids could manage something as big as that. Tang comes clear about how he was feeling quite sussy about Aang. You see, he had a nose for this kind of thing, and his nose felt incredibly sensitive from our hero. He could sense a familiar yet unknown stink from the MC, and it was a feeling that wouldn't let up. Jessica Rabbit jumps on Tang's back, teasing him about how he's overthinking things again. As she's riding the buff Tang, she mentions that their small team looks quite strong, and tells him to take care of them so he won't lose to her teams, but Tang was being serious. The emo boy takes another puff of his cigarette, listening to this conversation nonchalantly. He tells Tang to keep an eye on them, specifically on Aang. If there was anything suspicious about him that he can find and prove, then he should tell the other 2. Otherwise he should put his doubts to rest because he was probably overthinking it. Our hero stares at the city center's mission board, looking through the remaining missions available for them to take. It turns out there were only high-ranked missions available, and they could earn 10 points for each of these. Lan Snow jumps in, telling him that these missions were the most difficult ones in terms of level. Makoto theorizes that these are the only ones left because no one else picked them, and because they are the most difficult. Shadowy is staring at the board, not really saying anything, but thinking quietly, contemplating. Lan Snow talks about how B-ranked missions have 6 points, meanwhile C-ranked missions only have 3 points each, which makes the higher-ranked missions most attractive. However, the lower ranks were much more safe and secure, while the highest rank was always going to end with severe casualties. Aang understands. He's no idiot. He understands danger when he sees it. As Aang starts talking about what they should do, Shadowy walks up ahead of him towards the board. She immediately grabs all 3 pieces of paper with the mission instructions on them, as Aang finishes saying that they should take on all of them, in perfect synchronization with their team leader, Shadowy. After the deliberately slow few moments, it's time for some kick-ass action. We see our heroes running through some rocky terrain. It seems that they are outside the city walls and heading towards their mission objective. As they're running, our hero decides to tap the red stone on his chest and his suit to activate the nano-wing suit abilities. Immediately, it starts to do something as his suit starts to glow yellow and the stone begins to empower it. Sharp claws begin to emerge from his back as he's surprised to see the power of the nanotechnology. Soon, those claws turn into wings which give him a boost in his running speed. He quickly moves ahead of the rest, running straight towards a gigantic rock. In a flash, he carves through the rock in one smashing sprint. He stops, remembering to think about the nano-wing disintegrating and reassembling itself into a weapon. This sends currents flowing down his arm, right towards his hand. Quickly, a dagger emerges in his hand, and he understands how the nano-wing suit works. As he's holding that dagger, he realizes that the nano-equipment technology has truly evolved in the past 60 years. Shadowy asks the squad if they're ready, and they all acknowledge that they indeed are ready for the mission at hand. Their targets are 2 non-fin demons, and she suggests that they kill them both in one go. She gives her squad the terrifying look of a true-born leader, telling them to strictly follow the plan and to head out now. They all started running towards their target, ready for an incredible battle that will give us a thrilling look at their abilities once more. The demons realize that they're about to be ambushed, so they take up their own weird little battle stances. They roar out in anger, their eyes glowing red as they're ready for a fight of their lives. As they are zooming towards their targets like Naruto in a filler episode, Sidhu can't help but think about how they must make quick work of this because they have 3 more missions to complete. Things start to go according to plan. Snow heads out first. Using his abilities, he will be the first one to block their line of sight. He smashes into the ground, pulling out a huge chunk of the rock beneath him to block their lines of sight and confuse them. The demons can't tell what's going on due to the ground emerging in front of them as a wall. Aang and Makoto are now going to come around from the side, so that they can incapacitate the 2 monsters. Things were going to need perfect timing for this to work like Shadowy had imagined. Indeed, that is exactly what happens as both Aang and Makoto make their entrance to take on 1 demon each. These 2 spearheaded the attack and carved through the legs of these demons. They essentially rendered them immobile. Demons couldn't run away anymore, doesn't matter how hard they tried. As he hits them hard, Aang knows that he's about to see these dumb creatures flail about, since he has now destroyed their knee joints. The monsters scream out in pain, their legs were broken and they couldn't do anything about it. Out of the blue, Lan Snow jumped in for another attack. Pulling out from underneath them, he raised both of his fists against the demons. His fists connected with their chins, breaking their jaws in a powerful strike that shook the earth around them. Now that they were flying in the air, with their throats vulnerable and their bodies immobile, it was time for the team leader to finally strike from above, giving us a phenomenal view of the battle at hand, along with a few other things. With her sword in hand, she was ready to attack and end this thing in one fell swoop. A barrage of slashes took over the space, as the team leader carved into the demons like butter. When she landed on the ground, she knew that she had done her job and that this was the end for these non-fin demons. Her special ability, the overload treatment, began to apply on the monsters, as each cut she applied to their body began to overload with green energy, turning them into living bombs. The two demons exploded, their blood and guts splattering around in the air as Shadowy stood in the middle of the chaos, looking as flawless as she always does. The fog in the area begins to dispel, and the area turns stable. This was thanks to Makoto bringing the device and using it after the demons had been taken care of. This cleansed the fog and cleared the area of any visibility issues. Snow wiped the sweat off his forehead. He knew that this mission would be much more difficult, but it was so much harder than what they had encountered before during the examinations. He was just glad that the mission was finally over. While checking out the non-fin demon remains, it seems that one of them had dropped a red core. Makoto picked it up, looking all proud of what they had accomplished during this easy-peasy battle. The team leader, Shadowy, looked around at the squad and thanked them for their hard work, telling them that they've received 10 points. Meanwhile, Aang was still in awe by the high-tech tools at their disposal when he saw that the missions that get completed were automatically removed. Makoto talks about how tech these days mainly focuses on the demons, and how there's a chip in the mission that's linked to the point leaderboard in the city. The leaderboard automatically updates with the points received once the mission is completed. They had completed a mission titled Dispelling the Fog outside the city, and she wanted to take a gander at the other tasks on their itinerary. Makoto immediately noticed that the next two missions were going to be much harder. One of them required the squad to capture 3 non-fin demons alive, while another one required them to collect 10 non-fin demon cores. This depresses our blessed Makoto. She feels worried that despite killing non-fin demons all day, they've only obtained 3 cores with 7 more still to be found. She's also worried about the fact that they'd have to capture demons alive, which is going to be the hardest mission of all. Snow jokes that it definitely won't be easy for them, but he acknowledges that the other teams are also working hard to earn points. Man oh man, Shadowy blesses our screen again with a whole new plan to acquire more points. She talks to her squad with a determination in her eyes, telling them that they will finish their remaining missions and take on more high-rank missions, aiming straight for the top, no time to dawdle. This boosts the morale of the group. Makoto starts taking pictures of their leader, and Snow is fueled by the passion to reach the top. However, he wants to know the thoughts of his dear friend brother Aang. Firstly, Aang tells him to just call him by his name, because they're close comrades who don't require any formalities. He tells them that they're right, the other squads are probably working hard to earn points as well. He knows that it'll be hard for them to catch up if they don't pick up the pace. Aang feels a weird sense of nostalgia at this moment. He never thought his heart would have any empathy ever again after living for more than half a century across 2 lifetimes. He never even imagined that he'd regain his youthful passion after spending time with this crew, but the unyielding stubbornness of these young warriors had inspired him again and made him quite energetic. He gives them all a smile, looking into their eyes with joy as he tells them that they should try to complete a mission before sunset. He tells them it's time to go and solidify themselves as the best squad under Tang's captainship. In that moment, everybody was excited. Of course, Shadowy was more excited than anyone. Despite being a little mad that he stole all of the cool lines even though she is the squad leader, she's finally warming up to him. Sunset seemed to be closing in, and they still had to complete their mission. Snow was done tying up a demon, wrapping a large thick cloth around its mouth to keep it in check and keep it controlled. Another demon had already been captured and lay behind it. It seems that the squad had captured 3 demons alive, which means that their mission was complete. 2 of the demons were green, looking like large dinosaurs. The last one was red, and he looked more like a gorilla. Shadowy noticed that they ran out of tranquilizers used to capture non-fin demons. They only had a few special bullets for it anyways, but they made it work. Aang came up to Shadowy, looking at her toying with the gun and wondering what the hell even was that. She spun the gun around in her hands, explaining to him that these guns were created using nanoparticles. They were used to tranquilize demons. It's a beginner weapon for the nano wingsuit, but creating and using this weapon was way more complex. Aang sat down near the tied-up demons, thinking about how tranquilizer guns were now strong enough to capture demons. He remembers how in the past, they had to beat the shit out of them to knock them out with sheer brute force. They would have to hurt them so bad to knock them out that researchers would complain that they did permanent brain damage to the demons. Snow noted that it was good they finished capturing the demons before they used up all of their tranquilizer bullets, and that their mission was finally complete. As they stood around a sea of demon corpses, Snow finds it funny that they had to kill an entire group of them in order to capture just 3. Makoto was feeling hella sleepy at this point and mentioned that they must return to the city before sunset, stating that it was a rule that if they fail to follow, they would be punished for sure. Nothing can top the thickness of the law. I mean, the power of the law. Makoto tells them that they should head home and have some dinner before the sun sets. This sends Aang into an existential crisis, where he wonders if the current version of him even has a home. Sidulu mentions that she also has to head back to the dojo quickly because she's a stickler for the rules and doesn't want to mess anything up. Now, all they had to do was use the locating system to send coordinates back to the researchers, which will mark the mission as completed once the research team retrieves the passed out demons. This is when Aang notices a murderous aura in the area, but before he can ask his squad, a red laser comes flying through as they just stand there. It was a bullet, and it mercilessly carved through the demons that the squad had taken a whole day just to capture alive. Aang felt it coming, but the situation was already completely fucked. Sidulu couldn't believe her eyes. The whole day's tiresome efforts were completely wasted in one invasion. The demons they had captured with so much effort were now dead. Blood poured out of their mouths as a large bullet hole encumbered their face. The smell of gunpowder surrounded the air as they heard an annoying voice. It belonged to someone cocky and competitive, who told them that he cannot let them complete this mission. Makoto and Land Snow started looking around immediately, as all three of their captured demons lay dead, while Aang scouted the surrounding with his peripherals. It was a different squad, and their leader was annoyed that Aang's squad of rookies had taken all the height-rank missions from the mission board. The guy wearing a gas mask, looking like Bane from The Dark Knight Returns, said that him and his squad were planning to take those, and Aang's team had just made an enemy out of them. The situation was worse than ever. Not only were the captured demons now dead, but our heroes were also being targeted by a different squad. Aang has a calm attitude in this situation, and he simply asks them who they are. Apparently, this was the squad that joined Tang Tang in the last assessment. I'm not sure if the guy meant his name was Black Gun, or if the whole squad was called that. In either case, these guys were seniors to our heroes, and they were one of the 9 squads at the top. The red-haired guy asked the woman next to him how many squads joined Tang Tang this time around. She leaned down towards him and told him that 3 squads joined him this time, which surprised him. The thing is, these seniors were egotistic, and they wanted our heroes to pay respects to them before starting anything. The seniors jumped off their positions and ran towards our heroes. They immediately stopped moving as soon as they got close enough. You see, they wanted the rookies to seek for their approval before taking any of the high-rank missions. I guess they wanted to keep themselves up on the scoreboard. Of course, when they don't get a reply, they assume that these rookies were not taking them seriously. They were taking every single thing as a sign of disrespect, which is kind of stupid in my opinion. Siduli was completely stunned. She saw the demons that they had killed, and remembers how much effort it took to capture them. Her eyes looked soulless, and she was lost for words. In her eyes, you could tell that she was raging. She was holding her anger back, doing her hardest not to lash out due to all their efforts that these so-called seniors had wasted. The redhead guy asked who the team leader was, and wondered why the leader hadn't led them to greet their seniors yet. However, our girl Sidhu was not in the mood to listen to any more ego-driven bullshit. She was angry, and she was not going to let them keep talking trash. She lunged at the redhead, and spun around with her foot flying ahead, trying to roundhouse kick him. The redhead had fast movements though, and he matrix dodged out of the way. He was pissed now, asking her how dare she attack her seniors. He degraded the whole squad, calling them a bunch of undisciplined rookies. The heroic team leader of our squad was still pissed, and each word the redhead said made her angrier. She was going in for another punch, and this time she wouldn't miss. However, Land Snow and Makoto stopped her. It took all of their strength, while Snow tried to convince her not to act rashly because they were still up against seniors. Makoto lashed out in rage too, arguing with the seniors, telling them that they were being unreasonable assholes since they had killed the demons our heroes had spent so much effort in capturing. Redhead was annoyed. He found the notion that they considered him unreasonable as something laughable. You see, that's just how the nature of the competition was, and Redhead told our photographer gal that she was being a stupid little naive brat. Sidhu was about to blow up when she heard this. She was going to kill a bitch. This was too much chatter from a squad of dummies who considered themselves seniors. She wanted to scream at them, but instead she just started raging internally so that she doesn't lose control of herself and start fighting them. Land Snow looked back at Aang and told him that the sun was going to set soon, so he should go ahead and talk it out with them before they lose more time. As Snow was trying to control the team leader, Aang sprung from behind him like a shadow, moving at a breakneck pace. He jumped into the air, staring into the redhead's eyes, and telling him to fuck right off before kicking him in the face. Aang's foot landed right on the dude's face, breaking off his mask and sending him flying backwards. As he was flying back to hit the ground, his team got quite concerned about him. Aang was pissed. He had never seen rookies being oppressed to this level before, and it boiled his blood. He asked them if they had any idea how much effort went into capturing those 3 demons. The team was completely shocked, with the exception of Sid.